And in a way I feel helpless because I'm not trying to help them. Just say hi and be friendly. Don't know what my question is. Judy does.
You don't have to be some, I was going to say wise guru, that wasn't very tactful. You don't have to be some elevated spiritual being. You have to be a person, unless you have got special training. You have to be a person who is compassionate and caring about another person. If you have true spirituality within your soul, you can talk about the price of bread. It doesn't really matter what you talk about externally. It's your internal state of being. So the cardinal rules: don't criticise, don't condemn, don't judge, and don't blame. Don't try and fix another person's problem. Don't try and change their circumstances, because you might be doing them a huge disservice. Don't try and rescue them. Don't try and protect them. Treat them like a real person.
And just listen. And maybe that's what I've been doing. Just listen, let them get it off their chest.
There's no just about that.
But then don't carry
No, just let theirs go.
whatever you've taken on. Let it go. Release it to the management upstairs. Release it to the earth, and go about your business. Preferably cheerful business. You know, something that I think all of us identify with is when people start to be interested in the healing arts and spirituality, they become such miserable ones. Well, don't they? I mean, you know, you go to some of the conferences and stuff and you think, dear God, if that's the solution, I'll keep the disease. And it's the same in a lot of things. You know, any profession. But the convincing ones are the ones that just are what they are. They know they're good at their job. They know that they're in demand. They know that life will go on in spite of them, but not because of them. And they're the ones who are of immense value.
So it sounds as though they're finding you because you're ready to offer what they need, and there's a...
and it's come very naturally,
Yeah.
so I guess the last 30 years have kind of finally kicked in.
Takes a long time,
It's part of spiritual maturity.
which we're not doing tonight.
I think there's something, I wouldn't belittle listening. I think it's a real gift of the ability to listen, really, to really sort of listen to someone. And I think you mentioned earlier about the difference between, well, it's when people sort of say something and they hear themselves say something. You know, it's a complete difference between thinking something and hearing yourself say something. Something else happens in the saying of it, really. So what you're doing is creating a safe space for someone to sort of to say that. I think if someone repeatedly keeps coming back with the same story, I think that's a slightly different position, which
I think as you said about in surgery, giving people the time to get it out, and I guess that's what's happening.
well, there used to be this idea that if you had to interrupt because otherwise they keep you there for hours and hours, but actually people dry up very quickly if you allow them. And my opening gambit was, I started off in medicine, so how can I help, what can I do for you today? And then I realised that those are all weighted sort of statements. So in the end, I didn't say anything. I just smiled when people came through the door. And I just wait for them to say something. And sometimes that was a couple of seconds. And sometimes that was a minute or so. But invariably people would start saying, oh, the reason why I've come today is, and they'd get to the nub. And that's what I found was most useful, really. Although it was a bit off-putting for some people.
I like what you've been saying about the listening, and I was just thinking of experiences of being with different, not necessarily GPs, but any kind of practitioner, or any human being really. The difference between someone who looks like they're sort of listening to you, but you know damn well that their mind is on something else, or they're preoccupied with getting you out in the 10-minute slot or whatever. So the quality of the listening, so you might only listen for 1 minute, but if it's truly listening, that person feels truly met. And,
well, you know when you're being heard.
You do, you really do, and there's no deceiving anyone with that, is there? Everybody has that built-in knowledge of when they are being heard. And that's quite rare, really, I find, in your profession, from my experience.
In any profession.
Well, yes, in any profession. Yeah.
There's a spiritual text called Japji. It was actually the revelation of Guru Nanak, who then kind of founded Sikhism, and there's 40 verses in it, and 4 of the verses all begin with the word sunya, which means deeply listening, and those 4 verses are all devoted to actually what can happen when you cultivate the art of deeply listening.
Isn't that the basis of meditation, that you're deeply listening?
Absolutely, of course, indeed, to your own process.
And I think if you can hold on to the fact that you're listening, then you're not disempowering the person from sorting their own way forward, really. Because I think part of the problem is when you start to respond, you're going to rescue a mode, which you just sort of said a minute ago, which is do not rescue. Because what we're actually doing is disempowering the individual of their own strengths and abilities to manage a situation. And who am I to know what's right for someone at the end of the day? I can have a guess or a feeling about sort of something, but actually that person's the only person that really knows what's the way forward for them.
Real modesty and real humility are art forms we all need to practice more.